This episode is sponsored by Bigger City. Thank you so much for supporting us and helping our show to grow.
Hello and welcome to the Big Fat Gay Podcast, where we talk about the things that are weighing on our minds. I'm Dan Oliverio, author, public speaker, and chubby chaser, and today I am Taco Boy.
Taco
Boy.
Yes, just had a lovely lunch of tacos, and it was taco-rific.
Oh, ooh, I like that word.
Hello, I'm Trevor Keyson. I'm a super chub, and I'm Taco Boy's sidekick.
Snack bell?
Chocolate croissant lad.
Because
It just rolls off the tongue.
Because tacos and chocolate croissants go together like gasoline and bicycles.
My name is Michael Willer. I am a chubby chaser. And today I am a grateful espresso boy because this is our second episode of the day. I'm lagging a little bit, and Dan was kind enough to gift me his espresso.
Go-go juice. I gave
Yes.
you go-go juice.
As he put it, lots of instant espresso and milk and stevia sweetener of some kind.
Yes.
It's very tasty. So thank you.
Hey there, my name's Don. I'm a big chubby guy living here in sunny Hollywood. And today I am Taco 2 today. Taco 2 today.
Is that a play on Taco Tuesday?
Because I have also had tacos today. Welcome back, dear
Well,
listener.
now that we've updated you on our eating habits,
They all want our tacos now.
welcome to the show, everybody. We're glad that you made it. We are at the end. At this point, we will be at the end of July. Should be. We're recording this in June, but we'll be at the end of July.
We think you're at the end of July, dear listener.
And this will be the last, hopefully, and I feel confident in saying this. We said it last episode. This will be the end of the every other week era. So starting in August, after this episode, we will be back to our once per week release schedule. We'll be doing 2 episodes online and 2 in person. The best of everything.
The family-sized podcast, economy-sized,
King size.
grab
king
bag size, shareable size.
I think they should just change king size to fat ass size. There'd be no blowback about that at all. Would there?
No, that'd be fine.
It's back to school, so you're getting a big variety pack of episodes.
The summer's heating up too.
I guess technically we are just really the full-fat version, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
So the housekeeping. Thank you to our Patreon peoples. We love you very much. Thank you also to our listeners. It's possible we have hit 100 reviews by now, and we just don't know it yet because this is the future. So, thank you if we have, and if not, then you suck. And why are you even listening?
Oh my God.
We live for your reviews. We live for them. We love them.
This is Michael having his little espresso. He's a little.
I've had my espresso. I'm feeling it.
He's
I'm
a
fiery.
little fiend. Like when you give a little kid coffee, it's like, no, it's mine.
I'm spicy Michael now.
Yeah. Wow.
We have either released or are about to release the minisode with me and Don, depending on how we nail the
it'll be
scheduling
out.
down.
It'll be out now. I have declared.
Okay, he's manifesting it.
Yes.
That'll come back later. And it will be about some subject that we have yet to determine.
Oh, no. It's a very special episode.
Oh, right. Yes, it's a special episode that you have to be on Patreon to know about. Much like other behind-the-scenes content, minisodes, etc. Bob Aran will have come out.
Oh, there was
Bob Aran.
Michael found
We
some
recorded.
lost footage of us singing Bob Aran.
Yep, Bob Aran. Classic, 60s, 50s American.
It's funny, I remember
ridiculous
that,
song.
but I have no idea
Why
when.
were we singing this?
Because sometimes we get giddy.
It was early days, Don,
Usually,
early days.
to be fair, it wasn't that early. This was
No,
like
it
last
was
year.
early days.
This was like last year. It usually starts, we're trying to get started recording, and I've hit record or I'm about to, and nobody else has really realized that I'm like, all right, we're starting. And then Trevor will realize, and he'll start singing something random.
Yes.
And then I'll join in, and usually Don joins in pretty quickly, and then Dan begrudgingly joins in only to try and end
Well,
it.
it's just usually when Trevor starts a song, it has to do with either butts or farts or.
Or it's the lamb chop song that never ends.
This is a song. Okay.
No.
Moving on.
No.
Let's, Michael, you got to hit that button. You got to
Okay.
take us.
Let's do it.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
That was me drinking a big, delicious sip of espresso.
Man, it's just amping up and up.
I love that. We're starting here live with the Hollywood Reporter.
Hollywood Reporter, you say?
Hollywood, starring Harvey Guillen, who's bringing big and short bombshell style back to the red carpet.
You know,
Literally talking about his fashion and his style. It's a whole interview. It's delightful, but I love it's literally, as opposed to the big and tall store, which is an actual store, he says we should have the big and short store.
That speaks to me in a way that very few people can understand.
Yes, my little short king.
The short kings. One day we're going to get our little step stools and rise up.
To chest height.
No, just as always, we're talking about fashion on a podcast. And the photos in this, the fashion.
He's so beautiful.
The glamour, the shiny shoes.
Oh my God. There's a photo of him wearing, I don't even know how to describe the outfit, but he's on the rooftop of a building in Los Angeles, with the hills in the background and the blue sky and the green hills, because it's rained a lot this year. So they're actually green.
Very green.
And he's wearing this aqua teal.
We're talking about Harvey Guillen, in case you missed that.
Yeah. And he's doing this acrobatic kick, dancer ballet-esque kick with this outfit in the bright sun. And he's the most vibrant thing in the photo. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just such a good illustration. Also, the term pussy button is used at the top. If you look at the article at the very top, the first photo of him is wearing a sort of baby blue sheer shirt that they describe as pussy button. I don't know what...
You don't know?
I don't know what that means.
It sounds filthy.
It does sound filthy.
No, sorry, pussy bow.
Pussy bow. Sorry, pussy bow. I still don't know what it means.
That's only slightly better.
It's only slightly better.
It's even dirtier.
Well, pussy button conjures a very specific image, I suppose.
It does for me.
Okay. Anyway, moving on. He has a fantastic interview.
It's a wonderful interview. It talks about kind of his, becoming a fashion icon, and then the struggle of being, the fat friend shopping, and being able to get a bracelet, and also early on.
You might want to draw that out. So basically, I got a dress. I got this cool shirt. I got a bracelet.
Yeah.
Because
the struggle to find stuff that fits, and his whole kind of the journey in his career of, costume wardrobe person, just kind of throwing their hands up and can you just bring some of your own clothes, because I can't find anything.
Or where do you shop?
Yeah,
And I just, as a side note, that was entirely my experience when I was doing acting work.
Well, let's clue the listener in. So a little inside baseball about the way that a set works is if you're an actor, you have a wardrobe team usually, or at least one person who's dedicated to you if you're a star. And a lot of times they'll say, if they're looking for options for your character, they'll say to you, where do you shop? So that I can just go immediately to the things that you are comfortable in, that that you're familiar with, and then I can build from there. I as the designer can take that and I can start building on top of it. Well, when you ask a fat person this, oftentimes they don't have a lot of good answers for you. They either don't have a lot of options, or they're not satisfied with where they shop. And so he said, in the case of one costume designer, that they gave up. They were like, I can't find anything for you. I just can't find anything. And he's like, look, the struggle's real. This is my point.
I had that experience when I was doing acting work. They would at first they would just make me bring in some things, and then when they tried to costume me, this is back when Casual Mail was up. Yeah. They basically said, we can't costume you. It's outside our budget.
Oh my God.
The stuff basically just, the prices increased because of the fat tax.
Yeah. And a lot of times, I don't know the budget of the shows and productions you were working on, but a lot of times.
That one was 24. They had a budget,
Oh, fuck off then. Come on. Anyway, so one of my favorite comparisons he said was we've talked about this before, the idea that such and such clothing companies well, our sales have been down this quarter, this year, whatever. It's but there's a whole, if you just increased your sizing range, there are a lot of people that are desperate to spend their money, that would love to spend their money on your product if you had their size. And he gives the Pretty Woman comparison of the scene where Julia Roberts in her sort of, more street outfit goes into some high-end fashion
on Rodeo Drive.
store, right? And she shows up shopping because she's got the money, but she doesn't look like she's got the money. And they basically say, "Oh, we don't have anything for you." And he's like, "I would love to go back to a store that has no sizing for me, shopping just to tell them, oh, what's the quote again?" She's like, "I came in yesterday and you didn't have my size. Big mistake. Huge." Like, that's how huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
Like,
But I mean, we're at an absurd point right now. I live in Los Angeles, right? I live in Hollywood. It's the heart of Los Angeles. I have to drive a minimum of 45 minutes to buy clothing.
Because Big and
that
Talls are
fits.
not located in the city.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You know?
which is huge. Just as a sprawl, should have all kinds of different options.
Well, they used to. To be fair, we used to have places all around us, but since the rents have been jacking up, they've all folded, and it's gone to the hinterlands.
He also talks about in this article working with Christian Siriano. Famous,
Oh, yes.
Hello, Christian.
fat
Thank
ally,
you for coming to the rescue again.
and wearing a pink tweed suit.
I love this so
to the
much.
Met Gala, which was the theme was Karl Lagerfeld, who
And honoring Karl Lagerfeld.
And
Yes.
so he shows up in pink because it's Karl Lagerfeld's detested color.
Yes. Just like the pink tweet of just like a tiny little fuck you to someone who was famously anti-fat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Famously.
Like, I don't make clothes for fat people. How could
Yeah.
I possibly?
Yeah.
And I've heard that even from budding designers. Like, I wouldn't sully my brand. That doesn't even exist yet.
Dude, I've seen doofuses on
Yeah.
Project Runway say that.
Yeah, because I don't want to wind up at a Kmart.
Yeah, every time they did a fat episode on Project Runway, you were guaranteed to have at least 2 designers complaining about it. But with people like Harvey Guillen and Lizzo taking the forefront on being fashion forward on the red carpet, we're starting to see real representation for bigger bodies in very public arenas, and yay for that.
Yay!
Yay.
And again, Christian Siriano, like really being like that high fashion champion, which is fantastic.
And like being one of the first to step up and like, oh, sure, of course I'll do that.
And put their name on it.
yeah.
I was saying to Don earlier that I imagine that there's like a bat phone in his office that for any fat celebrity, when they need something, they can just ring him. And
One of those
he'll
phones
be like,
with no
I'm on it.
dial.
Okay. Well, we have another fun story.
Yay.
I like this episode as opposed to last episode, which had some real downer stories. This one, we're on a tear with this one. I think Dan should set this one up just because it's so in. This is a New York Times article.
Oh, yes. I love this
interview. Yeah. Well, do you want to? Now that you remember, do you want to?
Oh, this one, the one that I like.
Do this one.
So this comes out of the New York Times. Emily Morse, spelled like Morse code. The title is Emily Morse wants you to think seriously about an open relationship.
And just real quick, I have to interject and say that I love the picture of her for this article because it's kind of like, I don't know, it makes me think of like sassy wine aunt.
Yes.
Like your aunt that's going to be like, give you like, here, you can have a sip of wine and let's talk about, let's talk about non-monogamy.
She is wearing this really, really beautiful Kelly green sweater with like salmon pink skirt. Like, dun, dun, dun. So it's really unusual. And they've given it a red background. Anyway, the point of the article is not what she's wearing. That was our last segment.
Yeah.
The point of the article is that she actually delayed the release of a book because she says, no, I have to put this chapter in that I haven't written yet, that I'm gonna, about non-monogamy. And the editor said, like, good heavens, what for? And she said, oh, by the way, she's a sexologist. And she said, because more and more of her clients are asking her about it, it is becoming increasingly an option or a question or something to explore for a lot of, cis, straight couples. And so, finally. So,
Yeah.
I mean, for some of us, like non-monogamy is an old conversation, but for a lot of straight people, it is very recent and very dangerous to the point where they're saying things like, ethical non-monogamy. I'm sorry, all non-monogamy is ethical. Otherwise, it's called cheating. That's like liquid. It's like saying, solid ice. That's what ice is. It's solid. So, but she has a really good article here talking about a lot of, how you might go about it, but more importantly, like the function it serves. And I really, a lot of it is very constant with me in the stuff that I've said over the years, either in articles or seminars.
Even the way that she talks, at least in written format, I was like, man, I really see a lot of Dan in this. Like, the way that she just, I don't know.
True. It's very true.
Yeah, it's.
I'm not her, Michael. It's
Even don't
I
yuck their
do have
yum.
to point out we've
How
never
many-
actually seen you and her in the same room at the same time.
I have no
It's
salmon
true,
skirts.
and you're both wearing red, at least in this photo. And you say don't yuck their yum. Like, that is something I have only ever heard you say, and she also says.
Well, no, it's something you want to do in relationships, especially when you're talking. Like, you could be talking about someone's favorite movie.
Yeah.
Like, you know how awful it is when you have this movie you love and your partner's like, oh, Christ, that thing. It just feels awful. And imagine doing that about something really where there's some vulnerability, like a sexual taste or something you want to try. And some people, and imagine your partner's response is like, really? That? Ew.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that. You can't yuck their yum because it is very difficult, if not impossible, to recover from that.
Yeah.
Like that's going to stick in the relationship for a while.
Yeah.
And it's going to infect other things too.
Particularly because sex is something that people so frequently avoid talking about.
Yeah.
And so whatever is there that gets stuck is unlikely to get unstuck just because people don't tend to talk about it. And whoever it was whose yum got yucked is least likely to bring it up again.
That's right. Or they're going to hedge it, or they're going to pretend they don't.
And again, in essence, you're just dropping a little block in your connection with that person.
Yeah, and it's not that you have to say, yes, I totally loved it.
Yeah.
You don't have to lie.
Yeah, we're not saying that.
But you have to come at it from a non-judgmental point of view, which might include someone's wanting to bring up non-monogamy. And she talks about like how to bring it up and not as like, I've had it. We need to be non-monogamous or I'm leaving. Like that would be a bad way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, ultimatums.
Ultimatums never.
Not recommended.
And can I just say, for someone who's not heard me say this before, ultimatums are terrible, not because they do violence to the relationship, and they do, but ultimatums are really terrible because they box in the person giving the ultimatum.
Yeah.
They force you into an action that you may or may not want to take in the future. They make you take it. Anyway, but she talks about the way of saying it is like, what would you think of? And then you can actually explore it.
Yeah, I really appreciated also her comparison of, that this is coming up more often for her as she's seen people exploring in couples therapy. And maybe just in therapy in general, but also like the more that people accept that therapy doesn't have to be a stigmatized act, that it can be a way to investigate your feelings and expressing yourself in a relationship, that as that has become more accepted and more visible, that also talking about sex and openness and ethical non-monogamy, to use the redundant term, that this can also be talked about healthily.
Yeah.
Healthfully?
In a healthy way.
In a healthy way.
Yeah, I think she talks about, being a reflection of people being more open to it. And also the idea that, again, in the gay world, we've done this for a long time because we were always barred from traditional parts of life, like marriage.
Yeah.
So we've always been in the position where we had to kind of invent it ourselves, for us, by us. Whereas most heterosexual couples, that's on the shelf. You either buy it or you don't. You get married, you don't. You have kids, you don't. And like, there's no tailoring involved.
Yeah.
Especially, at least to the extent of tailoring it to like, hey, should we have a marriage and not be monogamous?
Right.
That could be huge for some people.
Right. One of my favorite comparisons she gave, which really illustrated it for me, because she was talking about like ethical non-monogamy, which you pointed out sounds a little silly, but the way that she compared it was like, there's a way to do this that can be very, very successful, and then there's a way to do it that is almost guaranteed to fail.
Yeah.
Which is in the same, it's sort of the same vein as, being non-monogamous in the same way that you have a baby to save the relationship.
Yeah.
To save the marriage. Like, you're going to focus on something.
That was a really interesting comparison.
Yeah, it's like there are underlying problems with the relationship that you're ignoring in favor of this other shiny thing.
Yeah, I did. There are a couple of points I kind of disagree with her about. I wouldn't say that non-monogamy is going to save the marriage per se, but I will say this. One of the things that non-monogamy solves very well is a sexual incompatibility, where the rest of the relationship is working really great, the sex isn't, and if you're monogamous, you're never going to have great sex again, or at least the sex you want, because you are in this monogamous relationship, and it strains both sides, right? You have someone who can't get what they want and someone who can't give what is wanted. That is equally awful. And I've been in that kind of relationship. And non-monogamy, it's not that it fixes in the sense of like some panacea, but it's like, oh, that's the tool we needed, in the sense that sometimes a screwdriver does fix a loose screw.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the point which kind of ends the article is my favorite. It's the quote, sex isn't just about sex, it's about so many other things. Sex is about your entire life. Sex is about energy, intimacy, and connection.
And she also has a paragraph there where about misconceptions about sex.
Yeah.
Which I love. It's like I say this all the time. It's great.
Yeah. Anyway, a very good deep dive. You should totally check it out. And now here we go. We're going. So loud. All right. What do we got?
We're here with Vice. And with Demon Derriere, who
we've talked about.
Yes, we've talked about. And there was a point, actually, right before we started recording, I'm like, wait, have we talked about this exact article before? And it was The Guardian. It was one of our Valentine's Day episodes. It was a different...
And it was about an event, Demon's event specifically,
yes.
Whereas this is an actual interview with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which we love to see.
This is about all things sort of fat activism and fat space and giving space to people, not only fat, but also with atypical bodies and racial diversity, abilities, exactly. Yeah. And the prompt that I got the most meat out of this particular article was basically a list. The question was, how can individuals each work on their own internalized fat phobia, right? And so some of them are very sort of like read, my body's not an apology, learn by doing workshops and blah, 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 blah. But some of them, like we get to journal, write your feelings down. And then I really liked like language, like be kind to yourself, avoid negative self-talk, like using words like ugly, annoying, gross. Too much is a subtle one. Like when you say, oh, that person's just too much, or like, oh, I'm too much sometimes. It's like, it's a really weird neg that I feel like kind of like slides under because it's like, oh, the energy that I bring to the room is too much. It's like, no, it's just you. Like you can be you and that can be okay. Fatten up your social media.
That's always the best.
That is really important, especially for, I can think of so many closeted chasers who they follow everybody but fat people.
Yeah.
Or they follow fat people on their burner.
Yeah, on their burner account.
On their burner phone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Break it up in pieces and put the pieces in different trash cans around town.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I think number 6 is my favorite.
Yeah.
This is my biggest advice to anyone from kind of fat community is get rid of your shit friends.
Yes.
Which it's just the people's concern for their shitty friends.
Yeah.
Can like always amazes me because it's like the people in your life who aren't shitty will still be there.
Yeah.
When you go through whatever kind of transformation you're trying to manifest for yourself. And it's just like they're an ass. That person sounds like an asshole. And like they sound like garbage and you shouldn't be so concerned with keeping them. But it's, I don't know if it's like, these people represent an ideal that they are trying to fit into or
it's just a symptom of essentially an abusive relationship, but on a much different scale than like a romantic relationship where it's just it's what you know.
Well,
like
I know a lot of pleasers get into this pattern of like, oh, this person is, that other person is the way they are, and I'm just going to alter myself so that they don't mind me so much.
Right. And when that's what you're used to, anything that's not that is sort of scary and other and requires you to jump over an imaginary hurdle to get to the other side of. But the reality is, like, if this person is a shit friend, is a terrible influence in your life, why? Like what do you get out of it at that point? Like, what did you get to hang out with them? Guess what? You can hang out with a lot of people that aren't like that.
I think that's kind of what's great about this article is because, Demon gives these tips and you can see from the article and talking about their kind of career and journey through all this, what they got when they let go of those shit friends and when they really just kind of made this change.
And the shit friends version of work as well, like the diversity hires. I've heard, Don, I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times, like, oh, we don't have a person of color in this yet. Well, we'll make this role, this side role, that'll be our diversity hire, essentially. But it's like another form of tokenism. It's like forced tokenism. And basically, Demon's way of saying, like, fuck you, I'm going to make my own job and make my own rules, and then I'm going to do this my way, and we're going to have fucking everybody involved. I don't care who they are, which is just such a radical, like, anarchist kind of awesome, like, punk rock way to do it. I love it.
If you're not already after our last, episode featuring them, give Demon Derriere a follow on your socials. And get that big, thick energy.
Okay. Speaking of big, thick energy.
Start popping locking.
At what point in your life did you like your own big, thick energy? At what point in your life did you dislike your own big, thick energy? I'm sort of trying to...
Is this the topic?
Yes, we're going into the main topic.
We're working our way towards the topic.
And kind of talking about looking at kind of the past and maybe how your body's changed and how your relationship to your body.
Yeah.
I mean, Dawn kind of brought this up. So do you want to set this up?
I feel like, okay, so the piece of your life that you're living in right now may look very different to you in 10, 15, 20 years. So with time, how have your perspectives on your own fatness in the world, how has it changed? How have you grown?
And does location change that? Like distance and time? Were there other places that you were able to put yourself in that made you feel, I know for my money, that is a huge one. Mm-hmm. Just physically being in Los Angeles versus being anywhere else. It's like as soon as I get off the plane, like I flew to Boston for years because I worked out there and I was dating somebody out there. I don't live in Los Angeles anymore, but I was, I've come and gone a lot. And every time I'm back, it may be a little less so recently, but really when I'm here, there is a really hard to shake off awareness of how I look and feel in my own skin. Mm-hmm. It's like walking past cars on the street and I realize that I'm looking at myself in the windows of the cars when I don't do that anywhere else. And it's like, wait, why am I doing that?
Like wondering if you look good enough?
Yeah, and it's like, is my shirt rumpled? Am I sticking out in weird places? Am I is my hair okay? Like, it's in a hyper awareness that I don't have elsewhere.
I think that could generally be said to be an urban experience in general.
Yeah, but like Boston, Seattle, I'm not just talking about rural excursions.
Okay. Well, let me ask, what about this? Because Los Angeles definitely has a body culture. And I've had this discussion with people in New York versus LA about the fact that in LA, your body is kind of part of your wardrobe.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like you could wear a form-fitting sweater and that's kind of like dressing up. That could be business casual. That could be something you go to a formal party with, especially if you put a jacket over it. Whereas in an Eastern, like Chicago or New York or Boston, like, no. You're not going to wear anything that's sheer. You're not going to wear anything that really shows your body. You're going to buy clothes that construct a silhouette. Mm-hmm.
Mm. And the clothes are the statement, not the body wearing the clothes as much.
But in Los Angeles, in Miami, in these places where you don't necessarily wear a lot of clothes. Miami,
generally hotter places.
Hotter places. Well, but they also have to be like fashion. Like I said, Miami, Los Angeles. San Francisco. No, not so
New
much.
Orleans.
Yeah.
But New Orleans.
Lots of linen suits.
Sure, but I'm saying that in New Orleans, you may not walk into a place with some sort of sheer drapey sweater that's designed to show off your body.
Yeah.
Not because you don't have the body for it, but because that's not the culture there.
It's not the culture. Yeah. So it's definitely that. That's a big part of it. It's like when I first moved here, Runyon Canyon, right?
Yes.
Like how many shirtless, like scantily clad people have you seen trouncing through and from Runyon Canyon? Mm-hmm. When a friend of mine from back in Virginia came to visit me for the first time out here, and I was just driving her, I think literally just from the airport to my apartment, and a guy was running down Hollywood Boulevard shirtless, and he was like an Adonis, but I'm kind of used to it because there's 1,000 people like him every day that I see all the time.
He is
but
nothing.
she was like, oh my God, is that normal out here?
Yeah, and it is.
And I kind of realized, oh, that is normal, and it's impossible you can't not see that.
Yeah, and
it's part of the city's brand.
Yeah, and it's not like there are no shirtless runners in Central Park, but where there might be one or two in Central Park, there's like two or three, a couple of dozen here.
I would say 100.
I mean, just yesterday, Dan dropped Michael and I off life, and we were crossing the street to go to the diner, and there was like a shirtless model going down the street, but I don't think you noticed it because it's just like a pigeon.
Oh, I didn't notice.
Yeah. No,
and he was like just an Adana. Like it is the
well, of course he
typical like
One of the WeHo wonders.
So I think something like in terms of time and this phenomenon that I don't know, been present to lately is I got myself a nice little digital frame. And I have lots of cute pictures on it.
Oh, yeah, it's
and
right
it's
over there.
pictures of me throughout my life. And it's just been weird because it's like I just see pictures and Dan doesn't think it comes across, but I remember how uncomfortable I was in like every aspect of my being in that moment. And I remember the feeling of like, we're doing a family picture. Like, come on, everyone get together. We have to do the fucking family picture. And just like the constant, just like, I didn't know I had anxiety because that was just my like base level of just this always just feeling sick and stressed out and uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean,
and the fear of whatever discovery of like there's so much stuff I'm compartmentalizing. And even just like seeing myself smaller, but I had so many more body issues then because I was just so uncomfortable in my skin and dealing with so much and trying to come to terms with things. I'm not saying that like the thing stresses me out, but just really I was the first couple of days because I don't have that many pictures on it, so I've seen all the pictures a couple times. But like really, before I added more, and it was just like these pictures of myself as like a kid and adolescent. It was just so weird to be able to step back into that feeling and just really get like, oh, I am leaps. Like I am still an anxious person, but I am leaps and bounds better and just so much more at peace with myself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff like on TikTok now. It certainly is still being drowned by the whole fitness craze, pseudo fitness. But there are more and more guys in their 20s who, instead of showing off how like, they dropped those extra 10 pounds that were weighing them down and making them look fat and ugly, and now they're ripped and they have washboards on their washboards. There is a counter to that, which is these people, usually guys, who are like, I used to look like this, and they look, amazing and cut and ripped. And now I look like this, and they're like much chubbier, no abs, and they're like, and I'm so much happier.
Yeah.
And they just, it's like,
See a lot of that.
Yeah, there's like allowing themselves to exhale. You know?
Not suck it in.
Well, and not be that like that idea that you have to look a certain way to compete, which is I think I don't know if it's a guy thing or a girl thing or anything, but there's definitely a sense for guys that one must compete.
Yeah.
I mean, we have someone we know who was giving himself a hernia because he was always just sucking in his stomach.
Yeah.
Because he was just so tightly wound and so just worked up in all this that he didn't even know he was doing it anymore.
Yeah.
And I relate to that because like one of my biggest things is, especially like with my new trainer, is like working on breathing.
Yeah.
Because once again, that's something I know from like seeing those pictures, like just not breathing and just always holding my breath, holding my breath
same.
all the time.
And not necessarily to look good, but just because you were so anxious. Yeah.
Both of those things are incredibly relatable to me. When I was a kid, I would suffer playing soccer because I didn't want to breathe heavily, and I didn't want people to hear me breathing heavily, and so I would control my breathing in such a way that I wasn't getting enough oxygen to play competitively. Like I literally just wasn't breathing enough.
That was me 100%. Every time I had to do any sort of physical activity in a group, I hated hearing myself breathing heavy. So I would try not to breathe while doing basketball.
And it makes it really miserable. Like
and exhausting and painful and
not great.
Not fun. And if anything, it drove me farther away from physical activity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
especially when you're the person most severely judging yourself for the physical activity.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't get away from you.
And much less like for me, and again, I know like I actually enjoy playing soccer, and so I enjoyed the activity, but I know for a fact that because mentality is such a primary requirement for playing a sport, maybe more so even than your physicality.
You mean your frame of mind.
Your frame of mind and what you are thinking about in the moment.
Yeah.
If you're focused on something that has nothing to do with the sport, you're not focused on playing the sport. You're not in the moment. You're not doing well. You're not performing.
You're never going to kick the goal if you're focused on how you look when you kick the goal.
Right. It's just going to go badly for you. And as an adult, I'm in far worse shape physically than I was when I was a kid because people get older, but I play so much better because my issues are much better managed such that I can actually be present and in the moment and play the sport and do it well and not be so focused on all the things that as a kid I was hyper focused on. Every time, which is partially why I ended up playing goalkeeper most of the time when I was a kid, even though I was really good playing on the field. But I couldn't play on the field. I couldn't let myself do that fully. And so I play goalkeeper that doesn't require running. You just have to have reflexes and some skill.
So one thing I want to suggest is, and this is something that you made me think of, Trevor, when you were talking about seeing the older picture of yourself and remembering where you were in that moment. This is an experience I've had before too, right? And it's one I do recommend for anyone. I'm not going to recommend that anyone live in the past. None of us are. It's not a good place to live. Live in the present, live in the future. It's all good.
I've done that once already.
But if you have a photo of yourself, right, that strikes a chord on you for positive or negative reasons, right? I had a bunch of photos I never wanted to look at. For some reason, they made me uncomfortable. I dug them out, and I when I was putting together an album for someone else, I had some of these photos in my hands, and I spent some time looking at them and really remembering what was going on in that moment, what my brain was thinking, and where I am now in comparison to it, right? And so this is a little involved, but there is one that's me smiling next to a camel, right? And you see my mom's shoulder over there and all this stuff in the background, and instantly it comes back. I remember I was smiling like an angel, doing my best to attract all the attention to myself because my parents were fighting. I had to try and take that attention that they were throwing at each other over to me so that it would stop, right? And then remembering at that same time, I'm like, well, they're taking a picture of me too. I'm fat. I hate the way I look at that age. So I'm trying to push that out of my head, right? And so when you start taking all those contexts and all those little memories and then putting it together and realizing with the perspective of distance across the time, how much you were dealing with at that time that you never gave yourself credit for and that no one else ever knew about, right?
Yeah.
This is important stuff for you to know. It helps you appreciate so much more where you've come from and what you have done. And it's very often a perspective we will not get because the memories that trigger those things are things we don't want to look at again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? So don't live in the past, but do not accept your fear of it.
Well, and the story you make up about yourself, if you remember that moment, anecdotally, you're like, oh yeah, God, I remember that. What a horrible trip that was. And then you go back to that photo and you realize, oh no, it was in whatever example, oh no, this moment that was memorialized in a photo was horrible. But actually, there's a lot of rest of things about this trip that I haven't really thought back on that were great.
It can let you reclaim those positive moments that you bundled with a negative one because you were so quick to throw it away.
Yeah, and you can just you can take what you kind of had imagined and make it more concrete. This is what it was, rather than this is what I'm remembering, good or bad or whatever. And oftentimes it's quite bad, which is usually why we avoid it.
Indeed.
I think also the reason I wanted to have the frame and I've put so many pictures on it is because, I went through that experience kind of when I'm first really spending time with these old pictures, but also wanting to grant my, little Trevor some grace and give some love to little Trevor. There was a picture I shared a while ago on Instagram that is one of the pictures of myself that I hate the most. It is... I'm showing it to everyone right now. It is little Trevor looking like a maniac with his...
is that your Cub Scouts uniform?
My Weebelos.
Yes!
Uniform.
You graduated up.
Yes. Cub Scouts Weebelos uniform with my Pinewood Derby car that got last place, and it's me and my dad. My dad did not help me with the car. My mom's boyfriend did. And so there's a lot of baggage.
There's a lot there.
There's a whole lot going on with that picture. And I look like an absolute maniac. But like, I don't know, I think that was a time in my life when I, need to give myself a lot of grace, and like I got through it, obviously. I'm here.
Well, and in that particular moment, it looks like you were super excited.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just being able to like Don said, like be present to that and like kind of recontextualize things. But I think just like what I like about, like I said, having the pictures is like really being able to like give myself some love to a time where I really needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems like it's kind of what Don's saying. Like that's a very healing exercise.
And it's only going to be on I think it's like maybe 10 minutes. And then it'll go to another picture.
Well, and I kind of like, because, this, so he's got this, what do you even call it? Digital frame?
It's a digital frame. It's an Aura frame. If you want to give us money, definitely promote your product with, promo code FAT.
Yeah. I love that it cycles through these photos, right? Because any photo that you're having trouble being with, it kind of makes you be with it, and then it's going to go away.
Yeah.
And it's not like, it's not cluttering up your world. And for me, a lot of my experience is, again, coming from bodybuilding and former fat kid, it's like you never feel... There's always that voice in your mind like, oh, well, that's a problem. You never feel good enough, right? Like, oh, there's that. Oh, what about that? Oh, I wish I could Photoshop that out. Blah, 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 blah. And your mind just runs. And then, you look at these pictures from 5, 10, 15, 25 years ago, and you're like, oh, damn. Why was I worried about how I looked back then?
Yeah.
I looked great. And it's just this reminder that, it's sort of like you always look great if you think you do, and you never look great if you think you don't.
Yeah.
And just reminding myself that perspective. And it's funny because I also talk to some of my clients about that, especially if they're gainers, and making friends with that part of yourself that has these desires, and the things that you were scandalized by 5 or 10 years ago, now is like no big deal to you. And that's true for some other chasers and for all human beings, and maybe not in kink, but in something else, where it's this like, oh, that's not such a big deal. I can do that.
My favorite thing about photos, because I don't have access to a lot of photos. I mean, I'm sure they are somewhere. I just don't put them out. Is that I don't really remember most things that well. And so looking at a photo of myself from whatever time is like, oh, what was going on there? Yeah. I don't remember.
You don't remember.
That's kind of cool. It's like learning something new about myself.
Every time is the first time for Michael.
Yeah. Okay. So is there any final sentiments before we move on?
I mean, I think my thing is just like give, wherever you are and wherever you were, just make sure to love yourself at any point. I think especially, we talked about this when we kind of talked about the whole twink death phenomenon. Like, I think it is especially important to like acknowledge how far you've come, but also give yourself grace and really just kind of give love to your past self. Because
little Trevor.
Yeah. Little manic Trevor with his 8th place out of 8 trophy.
Oh.
Do we have a tip?
We do have a tip.
Yes, we do.
We have a fun tip today. We have a tip that ties into a behind-the-scenes video.
Fashion tip. So last month when I was at Club Chub, I guess two months ago when I was at...
Oh my God.
Wait, no, this is
time. How does time work?
Last month when I was at Club Chub,
Oh my God.
I purchased some caftans, some muumuus, some silky robe things from Royal Rubbish. And the designer
I love that name,
Yes.
Royal Rubbish.
That's a great name.
The designer for Royal
It's
Rubbish
like shabby chic.
is Robert Ortiz.
Oh,
You can follow him on Instagram at Royal_Rubbish. And you can purchase your very own caftan at theroyalrubbish.com.
Have you? So I'm assuming you've tried them on. Like how's?
Yes. So I wear like 7X shirts to give you some perspective. And I don't think there are different sizes. I think there's some minor differences in the sizing. Right now, primarily on the website is t-shirts and hoodies. but there are a couple caftans.
Okay.
And what I like about these is most of them are a stretchier material. So I think that's how this slidable sizing works, because a lot of the other caftans I've seen don't have sizing, but there is like a max size.
Right.
And I would say that these, so I wear 7X and there's still room.
Nice.
Like if you were, a larger size.
Okay.
And they're really fun styles. So as of right now, there's 3 different styles on the website, but I know that they are in the process of updating the website.
Styles of caftan or?
Yes.
Okay.
Give Royal Rubbish a follow. Check out the website.
And if you want an example of what one of these garments might look like.
On Trevor.
Yes.
On Trevor in particular, we have yet to record it, but we will be doing a little mini fashion show that is going to go up on Patreon.
Yes.
He's going to work it.
I will probably have...
Work with an E.
Yes, work. I'll probably also have some like still photos on Instagram at some point, probably by the time this comes out.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, Don, take us into Bitland.
Well, since we are doing a show about perspectives, and we are doing a podcast that often stretches and challenges many of our perspectives, I was curious, gentlemen, what of your perspectives have been changed by our podcast over the years that we have been doing it?
By our own podcast.
Have your eyes been opened to anything? Do you have anything new that you've seen because of the things that we have been looking at here?
I mean, I remember being like, I can't be on a podcast.
Yeah.
Why? What would I do on a podcast? I don't talk.
Like Trevor's not a vociferous person in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Like pre-podcast, I did not see Trevor as somebody who could sit and monologue about anything. Now, that may not have been true. That wasn't my experience.
I think that was Trevor's perception of himself too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I think that's a fair thing to say. And I think it took a few episodes, but then like once we started finding a groove, like when Trevor's on a tear about something, like you just get so many great nuggets, and it's not always like just today, like the going back and loving little Trevor, like to me that's the gem, that's the big takeaway of this episode. So yeah, I had a similar thing with the podcast of like, what would I contribute to something like that? Like I can do the tech, I can like help put it together, but I don't have anything to say. And I think even actually we were talking about this before the show about like improv or like coming up with a prompt. It was when Don was trying to think of the intro before we started recording, and you're like, well, now everything's out of my brain. I have that sort of improv fear of, oh my God, what if I have nothing to say and the spotlight's on me? How do I talk? Like, and that was the case for me for the first couple episodes. Like I over-prepared because I was terrified of not having something to refer to because I didn't have that voice yet. I didn't feel like I had a way to contribute.
And Trevor, Michael, how do you guys feel about being on the microphone now?
Oh,
I hate it.
I don't know. I mean, I think even it has, I am far more comfortable, and I have found I have gotten more comfortable being off the microphone and talking, and just really...
It transferred to the real world.
Yeah. And like talking about... Like, I was always comfortable talking about fat stuff to people in community.
Other fat people.
Then it was... So that was like a big step to like being like, okay, it's going out there, and people who aren't fat might listen to it.
Yeah.
And, I really kind of got an idea of that, after our first Valentine's Day episode, when I am pretty sure my aunt heard me talking about cold fucking.
Somebody asked Michael at the time, my partner Michael, one of my family members, and I think it was Julia, because I was living with her at the time. She asked Michael, is this something I should listen to? And he was like, if you've heard the first couple episodes, that's probably all you need to listen to. Because that was right when it was because of the Valentine's episode.
Was she asking about the Valentine's episode? Oh.
Yes. He was like, I think she wanted to be a supportive sister, but she didn't want to hear anything she didn't want to hear.
About her little brother? No.
Older brother in her case, yeah. I have an older sister, but... Yeah, I get that.
But like, I don't know. I think I've said this before. I think doing the podcast helped me kind of be more comfortable getting involved with NAFA and just talking about fat politics and just talking to anyone about fat politics. And like, I think it's been great because I've had so many experiences of being so open and getting like unlikely allyship.
No, it's true. I mean, and that's what I've always discovered whenever I was like, okay, I'm just going to say it. And guess what? The sky didn't fall. Yep.
That you know of. It may have happened elsewhere.
I had that little teeny tiny umbrella that Wile E. Coyote has.
And then the sign that says like, yikes.
Yikes. For me, because I've been doing this work for a long time, and the two things that I love getting out of the seeing for the podcast is seeing listeners talk, like, Trevor and Michael, you were just talking about like how it's freed you up in so many ways. And I really love how the podcast has been freeing up the listeners. Like we get letters about how like, oh, wow, I've been listening to your podcast and now I'm doing this at my workplace. And
yeah. Oh my God, those are amazing.
I'm doing this now in community, or I just went to my first event, or like, and it really freeing people up. And when I was doing seminars or writing the book, I don't have that kind of contact with people. You don't get there's not the follow-up. Yeah, that's it. That's how to say it. And so that was wonderful. And the other thing that I've really loved is that I was always struggling for a way to reach chubby chasers because, the chubs have, it's not that chubs have infinite resource, but, if you're fat and you can talk to another fat person about being fat. If you're a chaser, that's usually the end of the road, right? Chasers rarely, because you can tell a fat person at sight. You really can't tell a chaser at sight.
I've had multiple chasers describe to me the relationships between chasers as being enmity.
I think
competition for resources.
I think that is true of some people in general, that they see all relationships as competitional.
Yeah.
If that's a word, competitive.
I would say that's true, but I would have said that's true a couple of years ago. And just the other day, I was talking to a chaser who's like, just so eager to like connect with other chasers.
Yeah.
I think that just might be something with like, the podcast.
Nah.
But I think also just like the age of the community and just how things are changing. And I think the more awareness around it.
And I've certainly heard that competition thing from chubs. Like, if
I believe it.
If he's into that, then he can't, like,
Well, and that ties into the whole like perceived scarcity.
Yeah, the whole perceived
more
scarcity.
chubs than chasers.
But I guess my point is that it has always been a puzzle for me how to reach chasers, because they, even if they self-identify, which is not a given, they may not show up at an event and then show up at my seminar, or or then buy my book. Blah, blah, blah. So this has been, and then there's obviously monetary obstacles for that. I mean, almost anybody can listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
Almost.
It's a low barrier.
It's a low barrier to entry, certainly lower than going to paying $1,000 for an event, or even buying a book. So I love that it's gotten. That's always been my thing, because I think chasers really, really, we need the work, like the inward, the introspection.
And the education.
The education.
Yeah.
And it's not that chubs have it everywhere. It's just that, chubs talk to each other.
Yeah. And it's not even necessarily that we've got like all the answers. It's just creating the space to talk about things.
Yes.
And to
You're never going to find an
or
answer
agree.
if you don't talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, we're not, sometimes we've got a good answer for something and sometimes we don't, but at least there's the space to talk about it and then open the door to people to write in, and we do a mailbag about it, and then it becomes a grander discussion than, sitting in your room alone and wondering about things.
Well, there's also a huge difference between, I don't know the answer to this, versus, wow, a lot of people don't know the answer to this.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, and then you all get to have a shared perspective on something.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I think, for the people who are alone in their room, they can listen to us and kind of get a sense of community and see the possibility that it is possible to connect to people and have these conversations.
Yeah.
Don, what about you? What's
Yes.
been your sense of growth or change, or
We all
difference
look
in
at Don
perspective?
now.
I think, feeling very put upon all of a sudden. I think my expectation was just to learn more about sort of fatness and fat community. And I did get that, but I think the biggest perspective shift has been in dating, less focus on sort of my own anxieties and insecurities and a greater understanding of the chasers' insecurities and anxieties. Because until we started talking about it on the podcast, that did not exist for me. I just assumed that they were sort of self-satisfied, that, you know, they had the power because there were few of them and you know, that I wanted them more than they wanted me and all that sort of stuff. And talking about it with you guys has been a lot more enlightening than I ever expected this to be. So that has been very useful for me in starting up new relationships and friendships and things like that.
Yeah. It's related to kind of this whole discussion, our original logline description of the show involves saying 2 experts and 2 laymen, which I'm not sure that really applies anymore. I'm wondering if we should update that in some way. It's not pressing. It's just like it's been 3.5 years now. I'm not sure that really applies anymore.
I still say that I learn new things every episode.
Sure, I'm not saying. I think we all learn things.
We all
like
press the button.
Oh wait, what's the?
We all learn things.
Sorry, it took me a while, but I got there in the
You're
end.
right, Trevor. We did.
How insightful! I didn't realize that before you said it.
I mean, listener, what have you learned by listening to us? And
Good segue.
That's actually a serious question.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear from
let
you.
us know. We're on Twitter and Instagram as
Tonal
Big
shift.
Fat Gay Pod. We're on Facebook as the Big Fat Gay Podcast. 5 stars everywhere. Support us on Patreon. See me dancing caftans.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/BigFatGayPod. See the articles we talked about at www.bigfatgaypod.com. Maybe you're the person we talked about who's listening in their room, and we're with you.
We're gathered around.
We're all sitting. We're all. Imagine us all like with our feet up, we're on the floor, you know, eating bonbons.
I'm on my back with my legs up on the bed. Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm doing some air kicks, and I'm flipping through a magazine of cute boys.
And I'm getting down the Barbie's mystery date game board.
Oh no, but we're making too much noise, and your mom's banging on the door. So
watch out!